Hello, welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast on everything disability. With us today is David Cunningham.
Hello.
And Katie Stokes from Dementia Australia. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for both having me on your podcast today.
No problem. And look, please like, share, and subscribe, everyone, and make sure we can follow us on all our different apps and socials out there. We've got a new segment, haven't we, Jonathan? Starting up for this episode. It's called Cruise Comment, and it's a beginning bit to introduce our topic today, which is all about caring for people with a dementia. So if you'll go into that for us and get into with Kelly. Can I ask you, Kelly, is it kale or is it Kaylee?
It's kale, like the vegetable, which makes it a bit easier to remember.
Kale.
I am a superfood, which is that's something.
And you must be a super person then, right?
Wow, I mean that's for others to judge, right?
Sure. Okay, so our cruise comment is this for this episode. It is dementia is a condition that afflicts many of our population, including those of us with a disability. We here at CripChat Australia strongly believe it's incredibly vital. Our society values the lives, contributions, and hard work of every Australian with dementia. They deserve to live with dignity and in an inclusive society that hold our utmost love, admiration, and respect throughout their journey with dementia. Therefore, it's our opinion that the philosophy of care and support that underpins a society that embraces around dementia deserves some explanation and is worthy of being discussed here today. I just knocked out my own bed. Camera's gone. Might have to cut that. Yep.
So, Kaylee, tell our audience a bit about the life and the work of Dementia Australia.
Thanks, Jonathan. So Dementia Australia has been in existence in some form or other in different places around the country for just over 35 years. We became a national organisation about 6 years ago, and we have a few different hats that we wear. So we are the peak advocacy organisation for people living with dementia and for families and carers. So we advocate to governments around the country, both at the federal and the state and territory level.
I apologise for that, guys. Can we redo that whole again for us from the start, please?
Sure.
Apologise for that, Jonathan.
No, that's all good.
We'll just go back to this bit again, and actually, I'll take myself off camera and read the comment, and I'll get back to on camera for the interview.
Yeah, that's fine. I think the rest of it, your picture hadn't gone away until
Are
just at
we
the end.
are we on live?
Yes.
No, we're pre-recording, David.
Okay.
Okay, Jonathan, you want to do a retake again?
Yes.
David, you can do intro if you like.
Okay. Who am I introducing?
Kale Stokes.
Jonathan Shar,
And the topic is how we care for screens with
what's the
the topic is how we care for screens with dementia.
music's on?
David.
Yeah. What's the topic? How we care with people with dementia?
The topic is how we care for Australians with dementia. Right.
How do we care with for Australians with dementia? Okay. And what's the
Yeah,
lady's
and we're
name?
joined by Kale Stokes from Dementia Australia, Jonathan and myself. All right. So, Jonathan, do you want to do the music again and do it again?
We can still hear you fine, even though we can't see you. So I don't know if that is helpful.
Yeah, we're just going to get our music into it. Okay, ready?
Hello, everybody.
David, go.
Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast for. I heard it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to CripChat, your weekly podcast for everything disability. Today we have with us Jonathan Shar,
Hello.
David Cunningham, David D.
Hello.
Today's topic is how to care for Australians with dementia. Over to you. We have someone from Dementia Australia.
Yeah, we got Kale Stokes from Dementia Australia. How are you, Kale?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for taking the time out to talk today.
Fabulous. So look, we have a first segment, a new segment on the podcast today, which I'll read out for us for the topic today. It just gives a bit of a commentary from the CripChat crew. So we'll read it out first, and then we'll get into it. So dementia is a condition that afflicts many of our population, including those of us with disability. We here at CripChat Australia strongly believe it's incredibly vital our society values the lives, contribution and hard work of every Australian with dementia. They deserve to live with dignity in an inclusive society that hold our utmost and hold our utmost love, admiration and respect throughout their journey with dementia. Therefore, it is our opinion that the philosophy of care and support our society embraces around dementia underpins this love, admiration and respect, and is worthy of some exploration here today. So, welcome, Kale.
Thank you so much.
And look, we really appreciate you doing the interview today and from CripChat Australia. Look, just to start off, would you mind telling us about the life and work of Dementia Australia?
Sure. So Dementia Australia has existed in some form or other for about 35 years. So most of our state and territory organisations began as organisations that were started by carers and volunteers who were caring for somebody living with dementia. And so we've been a national advocacy organisation for, well, a number of years now, but we unified into a single national organisation about 6 years ago. And I guess Dementia Australia wears three hats. We wear one hat, which is as the peak advocacy organisation for people living with dementia and for their families and carers. So we advocate to government for making sure that policies and programs and funding is appropriate to meet the needs of people living with dementia. And we also make sure that we elevate the voices of people living with dementia in all of the work that we do. So we have a range of people living around the country who are either living with dementia or who are families and carers of people living with dementia. And they really give us an insight into what's important. And so we can then use their voices and experiences in the work that we do with governments. Our second hat is as a service provider. So we deliver supports and services to people living with dementia, families and carers, and the wider community. We run the National Dementia Helpline, which is the kind of key entry point into our organisation, and people can contact that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 1800 100 500, and I can provide that detail to you after the podcast if you like. And that really is a way of providing information or access to support to people who might need it. And our third hat is that we also deliver education out in the sector to people living, to aged care workers who might be supporting people living with dementia, to disability or healthcare workers. And so we work really with as many different types of organisations as we can to make sure that they have the skills and training to be able to support people living with dementia in a quality way. So they're the kind of three things that we do under our Dementia Australia hat.
Fantastic. So what exactly is dementia, and what are the numbers like that actually have dementia across Australia then?
Yeah, so dementia is a term that is used to describe a disease process, if you like. So there's lots of different diseases that cause dementia. People often think about diseases like Alzheimer's disease as being the same thing, and really Alzheimer's disease is the cause of the dementia, but there's other forms of dementia as well that might be associated with Parkinson's disease or Huntington's disease. And there's really over 100 different types of disease that cause dementia. So dementia really describes the changes to our brain and the way that our brains function. And that's kind of how we tend to think about it. We know that there's about just over 400,000 people living with dementia in Australia in the current time. And there's about 1.5 million people that are involved in the care of someone living with dementia. So it is the second leading cause of death in Australia at the current time, and it is a leading cause of death for women. So often people don't necessarily recognise that or understand that, but it is something that affects a lot of people across the country, and most of us will probably have come into contact with somebody living with dementia, either within our families or our friendship circles, or possibly out in our communities as well.
Right. So I guess then, how many of that number would you suggest would actually have a disability of some sort, though?
Well, we have done quite a lot of work over the years, both here in Australia and also internationally, to recognise dementia as a disability. So we say really that all of the 400,000 people that are living with dementia are living with a disability, because it is effectively what we call a cognitive disability, so a disability that affects our cognitive functioning. And so it is the single greatest cause of disability in Australians over the age of 65. So it is really significant, and it's important that we do recognise dementia as a disability, because it gives us a different way of thinking about it and a different way of supporting people who are living with dementia, because in the same way that we support people with any disability out in our communities, we can do the same thing with dementia as well. And that's a lot of the work that Dementia Australia does with our dementia-friendly communities initiatives, which is really about creating more inclusive communities for everybody.
Yeah.
Is it common to have dementia before 60?
It is less common. So people do tend to think of dementia as something that happens as you get older. And certainly the risk of developing dementia does increase as you get older. But we know that there are some very rare genetic conditions that can cause dementia in children, so young children. And we also see people with what we call younger onset dementia who are developing signs of dementia before the age of 65. So they might develop dementia in their 40s or 50s or early 60s. So it is not something that is a natural part of aging, and it is not something that only affects older people.
So what then would life be like for a person who actually has dementia then, Caleb? I mean, would there be lots of complexities with it?
It really depends. So no two people's experience of dementia is the same. So we often, well, some of our advocates who are living with dementia tell us, if you've met one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia, because all of us who end up living with dementia have quite a different experience of it. People do tend to think of dementia as being something that affects your memory. So that is probably the most common thought about dementia or Alzheimer's disease, that it affects our memory. And it certainly can affect the memory of people, but it can also affect other things. So some people may have trouble with language, so they might identify particular words in a different way or use the wrong word in the wrong context because their ability to process language has been affected. It can also affect people's ability to judge distances, for example. It might create hallucinations or changes in the way that they see things. So, for example, someone who looks at a black mat on the floor might see that as a hole in the floor and be concerned about walking over the top of that because it looks like a hole that they might fall through. So it can affect those sorts of skills. And it can also affect the ability of people to recognize emotions in other people, or indeed to be responsive in an emotion in a particular way. So someone might feel a sense of apathy and not necessarily have the same kind of engagement with their family and friends that they used to. They might get frightened or angry over different things, and they might undergo a bit of a change in personality because sometimes the parts of the brain that control our moods and emotions can be affected as well. So for somebody living with dementia, all of those things might happen, or it might look very different depending on the individual. But what we do know is that people living with dementia, I think there's a sense out in the community that if somebody is diagnosed with dementia, that they don't have the ability to contribute anymore. And we know that's absolutely not the case. So we have advocates all around the country at different stages of their dementia who participate in our advocacy. And, they really have the ability to still make a meaningful contribution and be, a meaningful part of our local communities.
Have you had any situations where a lot of people think people think people with dementia, you can do something to them and they'll forget that you did that?
Certainly, we have had people living with dementia and their families and carers talk about the challenges of supporting someone or being supported when there are memory issues. And what we know is that even if somebody does forget what has just been discussed, what they do tend to remember is positive emotions or negative emotions, really. So if somebody has been talking to that person with kindness, with empathy, with non-threatening body language, they will remember that feeling. But if somebody is trying to rush them or being angry with them or talking down to them, then they might remember that emotion as well and feel stressed or frightened or angry, even if they don't really remember why. So it is really important to think about what we're saying with our bodies as well as what we're saying with our voices as well.
So, Kale, so like, what type of support to be available in Australia for people with dementia then?
Well, the important thing to remember,
what you guys are.
Yeah, is that the National Dementia Helpline is there for everybody, irrespective of whether you are living with dementia, whether you are a family member, whether you're someone out in the community that just wants to know a little bit more about dementia. So anyone can contact the helpline on 1800 100 500. And that is a really great starting point for finding out information about dementia. We also have a lot of information on our website at dementia.org.au. We have help sheets. We have lots of resources that can help people to understand what it is to experience changes to their cognitive functioning, to understand how they can best go and talk to their doctor about changes that they might be experiencing, and also what it's like to be diagnosed with dementia, what services and supports are available. And we also provide through the National Dementia Helpline links to other services like My Age Care or the Carers Gateway or the National Disability Insurance Scheme as well. So we've got connection to all of those services, and we can help people get access to the services that they need.
Fantastic. Yeah. How do family and close friends of a person with dementia actually cope throughout the journey of the person they love having dementia?
Look, it can be a challenging and confronting thing to watch somebody that you care about change in the way that they respond. But at the same time, we also talk to families and carers of people living with dementia about how rewarding it can be to support someone living with dementia. So, there's a whole wide breadth of experience out there in the community, and some people have, really positive things that they remember long after somebody might have passed away. So we have, families that will take their partner or their father or mother on holidays, and really build fantastic memories as part of that that disease trajectory. So we really focus on how we can live well with dementia, how we can positively live the life that we want to in the time that we have, and making sure that we've really got that ongoing connection to our communities and our families, which, lots of people living with dementia talk to us about how they feel quite isolated after they've had a diagnosis of dementia, and, their friends might drop away because they don't know what to say or how to engage. And so making sure that people still feel included and valued is really, really important.
I've got a question. Is there like a guide that people you have that allows other people how to know what the best way to get it around with or treat someone with dementia, or how other people have found ways that is best to treat someone with dementia?
Yeah, look at it. We do have lots of information on our website, and we have something called the Dementia Guide, which talks about how dementia progresses and the sorts of things that the person themselves and their families might want to think about as their disease trajectory progresses. So there's lots of resources available to help with that. But really, it's about starting with the individual person. So if you know someone well and you know what their likes and dislikes are, you know what their sense of humor is, you know what they particularly enjoy doing, then making sure that you still keep engaged in all of those things is really important. So, if you've lived your life being really interested in, I don't know, wood carving, you're not going to start a knitting club for your, for a person living with dementia, because they're not going to like it, right? But if they're lifelong wood carvers, then maintaining that interest is a really great way, not only of connecting, but also of keeping that person engaged. So knowing the person is really, really important in the first instance. And then there's a whole lot of other strategies that people can access to be able to make sure that they still talk to somebody, that they can still communicate well, that the physical environment is going to help them be able to remain independent for as long as possible.
So what you're trying to say is, if the person's got dementia, they still got the same personality,
Absolutely.
but they still got the same likes. So keep feeding them the same
That's right.
same interests.
Absolutely.
They're not a different person.
That's right. Yep.
That's
So Kale,
that's interesting
when it
news.
comes to when it comes to a period of challenging behaviour, Kale, when is it best for to actually support a person with dementia, and how exactly does one effectively assist them?
Well, as I said, dementia does affect everybody differently. So not everybody will experience the same changes in their behaviour or their mood. So it is really up to the people around someone living with dementia, whether that be family and friends, or whether it be staff who might be working in a service delivering care, to understand that person and what makes them tick first. So that really makes an enormous difference. And we do know that part of dementia can create anxiety in the person living with the disease, or they might feel frightened, which can make them lash out and seem aggressive. They may have hallucinations. So some forms of dementia have a result in there being more hallucinations, and they might feel a bit more agitated. Now, there aren't any hard and fast guidelines to how to support someone through this, because, as I say, it very much depends on the individual and what is going to work for them. But there are some things that we can all do and that we can all learn that can make a difference. So the first is having very clear communication. So for somebody who might be, I don't know, in a hospital room, say, and somebody bustles into the room and doesn't identify themselves and talk about what they're there for somebody living with dementia who might be in that room, in the bed, that's going to be an incredibly confusing experience. So identifying yourself, talking about what you're there for, can make a big difference. So that can help. Focusing on our body language and the way that we are approaching somebody. So not rushing someone with dementia, not crowding into their space and, you know, kind of getting into their grill is really important. And keeping a nice open body language can make an enormous difference. And if you engage with somebody with kindness and empathy and openness, then even if someone living with dementia doesn't entirely understand why you're there, they will still respond to that positive body language. So we do a lot of work with workforce, but also with families and carers of people living with dementia, to make sure that they think about how to consider what's going on from the perspective of someone living with dementia. So what might be triggering them, what might be causing them to behave in a certain way. And so if we start to work our way through some of those factors, whether it be the environment, whether it be, they might have pain, that they're in pain and it hasn't been addressed. It might be that there's particular elements. So if, I don't know, somebody lived out in the country and didn't really like big, bustling, busy environments, and suddenly they're in a room with lots of people coming in and out all the time, then that might be quite intimidating and frightening for somebody. So understanding the person and how they might respond to things and thinking about it from their perspective can make a huge difference in starting to
absolutely.
To minimize some of that changes in behavior.
And so I suppose on that as well, there'd be things that support staff and carers should actually avoid doing, which is all those things that you mentioned there were correct. I mean, Kale, just to be aware of those things.
Yeah, that's
stay
it. So I
clear
think it's
of them.
really not rushing somebody, not crowding into their environment, making sure that you give them a bit of time and space. Not just kind of doing a whole bunch of things at somebody, but actually identifying who you are and what you're there for. All those sorts of things make a huge difference in the experience of someone living with dementia. Yep.
So, Kale, from a personal note with you, then, Ray, I mean, what actually got you actually keen and passionate to actually become involved with Dementia Australia as the Executive Director of Advocacy and Research? What was the reason for joining?
Well, I've been with the organisation now for nearly 11 years. So I have been working with the organisation for quite a long time. And I grew up around aged care. So my mum was an aged care nurse. And so my childhood really was growing up in an aged care environment and going and spending Christmas morning, at the aged care service, having breakfast with the residents and helping residents with their meals and taking the ones that were still able to walk for, a wander around the garden to have a chat and get some sunshine. So I suppose because I've grown up around that environment and recognise that, people are people, I've always really enjoyed working with particularly our advocates around the country. So our network of people who are living with dementia and our families and carers who talk about their experiences. And I guess that's kept me here for nearly 11 years now.
Would you call it an actual career, or is it a vocation?
Look, I think it's a bit of both. I think that for people working in sectors that are supportive, I think there is, it is always a career, and it's a job. But I think there's certain types of people that are motivated to work in the sector, and we need many more to continue to work with our communities.
We certainly do. And look, so when it comes to government and the broader community enhancing and developing services and training opportunities for support staff, how best could they actually do that from your point of view?
Well, Dementia Australia has been very strongly focused on advocating for compulsory dementia education for all staff that work across healthcare and community and aged care services, because we know at the moment that it's not a compulsory part of their education. And given that so many people living in residential aged care, about 2/3 of people living in residential aged care have a moderate to severe cognitive impairment, so they all have, a form of dementia. It's really important that we provide training and education to staff to ensure that they're able to support people living with dementia in a really high quality way. But it also means that there's more satisfaction for the workers as well, because they have a much more fulfilling engagement with people living with dementia, and they have the skills and training to be able to do that in a consistent way. So that's certainly something that we've been focused on and will continue to talk to government about.
Fantastic. So that actually then that concludes our interview with Cal. So I'm going to ask now, do you have any final thoughts for us, what you actually, a takeaway message for our audience?
Oh, a takeaway message, that's always a hard one to come up with. Look, I think it's that just to keep in mind that dementia is a disability. So some people are living with other forms of disability and dementia, but we see dementia as a disability, and look for supports and inclusion of people living with all forms of disability in our communities, including people living with dementia.
I was going to ask one more question. What's the best way to spot out dementia from someone?
Well, it takes a little bit of time to diagnose dementia. So often the changes to our brain happen over a longer period of time, and it can take a little while before we start to see changes. But the way that we best talk about it is if you start to see that, like if you go into a room and you've forgotten why you went in there, and that just happens sort of once, then that's fine. But if it happens on a regular basis and more consistently, or if you forget where you've put the car keys and then you forget what the car keys are for, then it's probably time to go and talk to your doctor. And we certainly do encourage anybody who is worried about their brain to go and talk to their doctor and get some further support.
Excellent. So look, thank you again, Carl, for joining us today. It's been fantastic to have you with us, and look, I hope you enjoyed the time with us. I hope we can have more chances to share time with Dementia Australia in coming years, in a great partnership together between CripChat Australia and Dementia Australia, working hand in hand. Would that be useful for you, Carl?
Yeah, terrific. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk about it.
No problem. And look, you're going to be CripChat Australia. You're working podcasting disabilities. Please like, share, and subscribe. And now over to Jonathan for our dedication. Jonathan.
Yes.
The dedication, mate.
So Disabilities dedicated to care than her friends and family, and we do hope that by bringing a light to dementia and how it affects the people, friends, and family, we can hope for better outcomes in the future.
Great. Thank you for that, Jonathan. And look, thank you, Carl, again for joining us. It's been great having you.
No problem at all.
And that concludes Australia for this week. See you next week, guys.
Thank you.
Can you press on?
You're right, Jonathan.